So in this segment, we're going to be discussing the cold, cynical, and paranoid. If this is Labour in opposition, what will it look like in power? So this is pretty dystopian article in my opinion. It's just sad. This is from a Guardian columnist called John Harris, which is pretty interesting, and it does look at some of the things I've been thinking about with the Labour Party for a while. It does explain that quite well. So on both the right and the left of the Labour Party, one article of faith has always seemed to be set in stone. The idea that you can pursue progressive dreams using no end of skullduggery and nastiness and never worry about the contradictions. Whether they have been Blairites, Brownites, disciples of Jeremy Corbyn, or servants of Starmer, really weird wording he's using, a certain kind of Labour high-up has always thrived on a loathing and mistrust of their internal enemies and a drive to seize control of the party machine. What this entails is always the same manic apparatchiks. A member of the Communist Party, men usually stalking around party offices, desperately trying to fix the selection of parliamentary candidates and dispensing off-the-record briefings about whichever figures are deemed ready for liquidation. So this is one of the problems, in my opinion, with the Labour Party, that it allows the leadership way too much say within the party as to who can run and where. We still have things like votes for candidates, kind of like primary systems, but they can be rushed through in order to help certain candidates, which we have seen. The difference is, though, the author talks about Starmer's predecessors. None of them have done the scale of ideological purging that Starmer has done so far as I'm aware. Not this publicly anyways. Maybe it's because more things can be shared on the internet now and you have things like new media, but it does show you it does show you what Starmer is doing. We can see it a lot more visibly. The Labour Party care clearly not about a broad church anymore, and with Labour ignoring the will of the party membership on things like PR, it goes to show you that things are not so democratic within the party. But maybe this has always been the case, as he kind of lays out, but it's just a bit more brazen now. You can see it. First came the withdrawal of the Labour whip from Corbyn just over a week ago. That's a lot. It was a lot longer than that. He's talking about Jamie O'Driscoll, the elected mayor of the North Tyne area, was kept out of the running to lead the North East region with no official notification as to why. Apparently it's to do with his appearance of Ken Loach, but we don't know if that's true. With the Corbyn one, Starmer said, I believe the night before a report came out into anti-Semitism that no one should downplay the report. Corbyn did that and walked straight into the trap Starmer set out for him. The one with the mayor, I think, is particularly egregious. The arguments used against him make no sense because they say no one has a divine right who can run as kind of a Labour candidate in the selection process within the party, but it doesn't make sense. They also cite him sharing a panel with Ken Loach. It just didn't make sense. And Labour are so desperate not to be called out on anything that they won't do anything in case it causes ripples. The mayor in question was running for a new role, yes. He does not have a divine right to run. However, he should have been on the ballot for the members to decide. That's all he wants, and that's what I think most people want, is just for him to be on the ballot within the Labour Party so the members can decide should he be the candidate or not. The mayor in question interviewed Ken Loach on things around film because that's Ken Loach's area of expertise. The BBC even did a piece on Loach's work recently. Is the BBC now anti-Semitic as well for platforming him and not calling him out? Starmer has been in pictures with Loach, also been in pictures with Mayor Driscoll. This feels like actual cancel culture, that if you share a platform with people, you can also get cancelled unless you call them out to their face, which, again, that's not really a system that makes sense unless you're in a debate setting. The whole story has made way bigger waves than if this mayor was just selected by Labour Party to run as mayor of the area, or even if he lost the selection process when the membership voted. This story has become way bigger than anything else if this guy was just allowed to run. It makes no sense to do what Labour have done here. I think it's the Streisand effect in a sense. For the past year, meanwhile, less high-profile stories have been piling up about exclusions from parliamentary shortlists and meddling in local parties, as evidence from the Driscoll and Corbyn cases. I think he's an outlier here. I think it's kind of annoying that he was deselected, but at the same time, I can see why he did it, and he walked straight into it. But the people around Starmer often frame what they are doing in terms of rooting out anti-Semitism, but they also fill their due diligence charge sheets with an array of other alleged transgressions. In doing so, they not only cheapen their case, but point to one inescapable conclusion, that what is going on is also about squashing anything and anyone deemed either too left-wing or in any way disobedient. I think they're trying to get rid of people who might be perceived as media liabilities when there's not really a ton of evidence for it. There is no inconsistency in supporting Labour's newfound intolerance of anti-Semitism whilst also wondering why unrelated and completely trifling accusations are also cited again and again, and boggling at a party so neglectful of party due process and consistent standards. Behaviour flagged as problematic has included liking tweets by the former Labour policy chief Andrew Fisher. I guess it would depend what you're liking. If you're liking his tweets criticising Labour, I can see why that would be an issue. And the Green Party MP Caroline Lucas giving an online thumbs up to the Occupy movement, which faded away a decade ago. In Milton Keynes, the reasons given by the party for excluding a would-be parliamentary candidate included liking one tweet by Nicola Sturgeon saying the Scottish First Minister has recovered from COVID, and another that called Starmer a prat. On the one where someone called Starmer a prat, that's a really dumb thing to do, and something the media will pick up on, so that one I kind of get. But if they said, because that, if they also gave the reason they liked a tweet from Sturgeon, then that makes no sense. But the rest of the list screams of people being unselected for roles, and lists followed by a desperation to figure out a justification for it. So they're saying, we deselected you, and they asked why, like, Twitter. And it's like, what are you talking about? A newly recruited Labour activist in the Cornish seat of Camborne and Redruth was contacted about past tweets expressing favourable opinions about senior Green Party politicians, and not just ruled out of the local candidate selection, but expelled from the party. Kafkaesque insanity, she said, not unreasonably. And again, this makes no sense. This is what I'm talking about here. It just looks like they're looking for reasons they just want to expel people without a reason. They might as well go full mask off and just say they don't need a reason, they just don't like you. When asked for evidence, they can just say, I made it up.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Now, as looming boundary changes entail a new burst of selection contests, the stories are multiplying in South Wales. For example, 2 sitting MPs had to recently undergo a selection contest for a new constituency spanning the current seats of Meredith, Tyndale and Remenray and Sion Valley. Sorry, those are Welsh names, I butchered those. The result was nothing if not predictable. Starmer's Shadow Wales Minister Gerald Jones defeated the left-winger Beth Winter, who says the contest was bulldozed through in a fortnight and no in-person hustings. Like Driscoll, she says she will be, quote, taking advice and soundings in the next days ahead of their next steps, end quote. But the machine grinds on, and it's not too surprising that they forced through this person because they're a shadow minister, but also on the face of it, it looks absolutely awful, I'll be honest, especially when they had no in-person hustings or anything like that. They just forced this one through, and there's not much these two people can do, because as long as Labour have not committed any discrimination, there's nothing legally they can do here. The Labour Party is a private institution, but what Labour are risking is more apathy, and that's not going to help them flip seats. We've covered before Labour risking things with their Brexit policy. Yes, there are people who just vote for the leader without understanding that we don't live in the US-style system, the presidential system, but these candidates still have to inspire and organise people to go out and knock on doors. I doubt Starmer is picking people based on their ability. He's just looking for boring safe bets that are probably ideologically similar to him. In the Cherwell district of Oxfordshire, the result of May's council elections meant that the local Labour Party could have formed a coalition. This one's really bad. They could have formed a coalition with the Lib Dems and Greens and local independents, but negotiations apparently fell apart after an intervention by the party's National Executive Committee, handing power to a minority Tory administration. In the home counties borough of Hertmere, meanwhile, the local party is still awaiting the NEC's decision on whether or not to approve its deal with the Lib Dems. And this is a party, the Labour Party have said they will give more power to local people, but it's stopping councillors going into coalition with other parties. So instead of doing what's of the local parties and letting instead of doing what's in the interest of the local parties and letting kind of Labour rule in coalition, they're letting the Tories run it. This is because of the Central Labour Party. This is what the party is doing. Because if these councillors disobey the party machine can turn on them and deselect them. This is what I'm talking about. This is just absolutely toxic. In Westminster, there is another element, and this again is really bad, is another element of the leadership's behaviour, a briefing culture war whose toxicity is increasing fast. Recent targets of Labour's whispering have included the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, covered that one before, her cabinet colleague Ed Miliband. I've not seen any negative briefings on Ed Miliband, Red Ed Redemption, but if I do, then, they might get a call out on that one. And the Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, who said, quote, whenever I go out with something positive, the negative Westminster briefing machine somehow flicks into gear, end quote, says Burnham. And Burnham is not even an MP. He's not really a contender for Labour leadership. He has to come back into politics for that. Many Labour people seem to be miserably keeping their heads down in case they too come to the attention of people who could yet bring their political careers to an abrupt end. It all feels the opposite of the collective determination and excitement that ought to be cohering as the next election approaches, and prompts one obvious question. If things are this ugly when Labour is in opposition, what will happen when they actually take power? And this is something I've been trying to figure out for a while now, and it all makes sense. This is why the Shadow Cabinet are so quiet, because they fear being briefed against. I can see why Starmer would fear someone like Burnham, a northern guy who does not put people to sleep when he speaks. He is not an MP though. So for them to keep briefing against him doesn't make sense, but I think Starmer fears him a bit. We saw the briefing machine attack Cooper when she didn't back the posters. It was pretty gnarly. If that's coming from Starmer, I'm worried, but I think it's from overly ambitious cabinet members who need to watch out in case their careers get caught in the reeds. But this tells me that Starmer is well aware of his weaknesses. This is why he does not do a ton of interviews. He's not good at them. He's awkward, he's got big T May vibes, Theresa May, and instead of letting the shadow cabinet come in and help with that by doing a lot more of the media work, he keeps them in the dark. Maybe he's worried about a leadership challenge. It goes to show you that he ain't got Riz like Blair does. But instead of trying to make up for his lack of charisma, he stops his team doing well and actively allows them to be put down in the media by internal briefings, whether it's his team directly or someone in the shadow cabinet doing the briefings. He has not stopped them. This is the sign of a very weak leader. He can't lead and won't delegate so his team can shine. That was one of the great things about Sir Alex Ferguson. He's a guy who understood delegation and management. Starmer allows them to be put down. This is probably why we keep seeing people like Streeting do interviews, because he's not a threat, because no one likes Wes Streeting. He got clowned recently because of his tweets. The guy's a clown. It also, the author says, it is only our crooked electoral system that endows Labour with its political monopoly and gives the fixers, the apparatchiks, their power. A lot of people in the party seem to understand that, which is part of the reason why last year's Labour conference voted to transform politics by embracing proportional representation. Starmer and his people, as you may recall, indicated the decision would be ignored and return to the business at hand, command control, and the kind of power so cold and cynical that you sometimes wonder if it has any content at all. And that's something Andrew Marr actually spoke about, pushing Labour to do PR. It's quite interesting, actually, Marr was doing that. And it's kind of sad that we're in the state. I think we really do need a PR system. I would want to see a PR system put in after Labour's first term, especially if Labour don't achieve a lot in what would be their first term. That would help them get a second term, and that third one we would see a PR system, so a coalition, hopefully. But this is what happens when you centralise power and have a weak leader who's scared of rivals. What these MPs need to remember is that Starmer won't be around forever, and that the membership will most likely pick the next leader, because that's how the system is now. All of this purging that you might be in favour of now might come back to get you. In the words of Judai Yugi, that which helped you then is gonna hurt you now. The so-called broad church of Labour never really existed because it was just so easy to purge people ideologically. But something Tony Blair never did with Jeremy Corbyn, for example. And now we're seeing people desperate for power with a limited understanding of how to actually get it in Starmer's team. I wish we could have the politics of realistic hope, nothing overly ambitious. None of us, we can just rejoin the single market nonsense, but one that will rebuild bonds. That's what I'd want to see. But we ain't got that. Once again, Dante is right. You hate to see it. The look into the Labour Party beyond the surface, when you look at it, is this what you really want to see? Kind of like those other dudes who talk so highly about Labour. Is this the party you're really happy with? And to the audience and the people who live in the UK, or at least live in Great Britain, will you hold your nose and back them in the hopes that they will get rid of the Tory party, and we hope Labour changes in government? It feels like that's the best we can hope for. If that is, then we best start praying.
Start praying, boy!
But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.